So again, when you're noticing where your breath is, you might feel how the gaze shifts, changes a little bit. You can still see me, but I'm not the main focus of what you're looking at, because you're looking internally. It's the same when we keep our eyes open and we feel our feet. We're still aware of where we are in the room and what's going on. But the gaze shifts down and in to feel a part of the body. We just noticed our feet. That's mindfulness of the body. But it's also a really great skill to have that we can carry around and keep in our pocket, so to speak, and utilize anytime we want. And that is, let's say your mind gets kind of spun, or you are distracted with some problem. Well, if you go to a part of your body, then you're pulling yourself down out of the thinking mind and into something that's in the present moment. So it's a way to self-regulate. It's a way to start taking a pause. It's a skillful means, in other words. We can also do things that require a little bit more of physical movement to bring us into the body. I'm going to pause for a second. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're game for this, and you can also just imagine doing this, because actually that has a lot of the same benefits. What we imagine ourselves doing, in some manner we are doing. Could be energetic or psychological, psychic, but something's changing in the body and the mind's connecting. So if you'd like to move a little bit more forward on your chair, if you're on a cushion, you can just stay where you are. And separate your feet a little wider than hip width if you have the space to do that between each other. And come down to your elbows. So place your elbows on your knees. If you're on the ground, you can even place your hands a little more forward, whatever's comfortable. And allow your head to hang. So do what's comfortable with your arms and your hands, and just let your neck drape. Just let the neck fall out of the shoulders. And you'll notice that there are various sensations to just doing this. So notice whatever the sensations are. And then also notice your breath. And then slowly, slowly begin to restack your spine. Try not to lead with your neck. So roll up with your chin as close to your chest as you can, until you've come all the way back up, so the head will be the last to arrive. And then either with your eyes opened or your eyes closed, check in and see, well, what does my body feel like now? What's the resonance of what we just did? It may not be obvious. It may be quite subtle, but can you feel it? And you also may notice if your breath, or that your breath has shifted or changed or moved. Or maybe it's in the same location that you noticed initially. And then allow your eyes to open again if they're closed. Let's do a tiny twist. Let me show this to you first so that you have the option of sitting this out if it doesn't look like it's fruitful for you. What we're going to do is put our left hand on our right leg and bring our right arm and hand behind us. And we're going to be twisting to the right. But notice if you've already turned your head to the right, because this is what we do. What part of the body goes first in most things that we're doing? The head. Yeah. And even not just the physical skull head part, but the mind usually leads the body and is in front of or behind the body in most cases. Usually not right in it. And it's kind of funny when we notice that. Or let's make it funny when we notice that. Because having a sense of humor is very helpful, as I'm sure you know. So keeping your arms and hands exactly where they are. allow yourself to feel and root your sit bones. So those are the two bones that you're feeling in the cushion or the chair. And turn your head so that your chin is right on top of your breastbone. Good. Okay, so we've gotten a little bit of rooting through the sit bones, and if you're in a chair, you can root your feet as well. Just allow the bones of the feet to rest into the ground. Now, keep the chin right on top of the breastbone as you exhale, and just turn your navel to the right. Don't turn your head. Can you isolate that? For some of us, that's easier than others. But just try. Turning the navel is actually turning the lower back to the right. Now notice where your breath is in relationship to what your body's doing. Where do you feel the breath? And then when you're ready on an exhale, start turning the ribs to the right. Now because your chin is over your breastbone, that means that the head's going to start to turn with the torso. So turn the ribs to the right as much or as little as you're comfortable. And then notice where your breath is in relationship to where you're twisting. So try not to manipulate your breath if you can. Just let it land where it lands and notice it. Now on an exhale, turn your collarbones to the right and allow your head to turn to the right as much or as little as you like. And just scan your body. Is there tension anywhere? If there is, maybe come out of the twist a little bit. And notice where your breath is now. Whenever you're ready on an exhalation, allow the torso to revolve forward. So we unwind, untwist. Place the hands in a neutral position, with your eyes opened or your eyes closed. Notice the difference on the right and the left side. What can you feel? What do you sense? Can you feel a difference in your breath? And then if your eyes are closed, allow them to open. So we're going to do this as an experiment on the other side. So in the turning to the right, twisting to the right, we allowed ourselves just to twist and notice where the breath was in relationship to what we were doing, or just notice where it was. On this side, when we go to the left, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the bottom of the spine, go to the middle of the spine, the torso, the upper back and neck. We're going to take it incrementally like that. But this time, what I'd like you to experiment with, just for fun, is to see if you can address wherever you're twisting with your breath. In other words, when you're turning the navel to the left on this round, see if you can breathe into the lower part of the torso. And then when you start to turn the rib cage to the left, see if you can breathe in the middle part of the torso. And then when you're turning the collarbones in the neck, see if you can breathe up higher in the upper torso and the neck. And so this side we just noticed breath in relationship to movement. And on this side we're going to see if we can marry them, breath with movement, so that the breath is exactly where we're feeling something. And we'll just see what that did. Okay? So the left hand goes behind us, the right hand can be on the left leg. So try not to turn the head first, it's a habit. It's a big one. And then when you're ready, on an exhale, because it's better for your organs and glands to twist and exhale at the same time rather than inhale. On an exhale, turn your navel to the left. When you fully exhale, then it's time to breathe in and breathe into the area that you're twisting as much as you can. So that would be the belly, lower back area. And then whenever you're ready on an exhale, turn the ribs to the left. Chin lined up right over the breastbone. So now we're breathing into the middle of the torso. And then when you're ready, on an exhale, turn the collarbones and the neck and the head to the left. And see if you can lift the breath up into that area of your body. And when you feel that you've explored this long enough, on an exhale, revolve forward. And then we take just a moment to see if we can notice the resonance of what we just did. Everything has a resonance. What can you feel? And then allow your eyes to lift or open again. So we'll do one more thing. And this involves crossing the elbows. So let me show it to you, see if you want to do this. Cross the elbows, and if you want to, you can hold a thumb. If that's not happening because of your shoulder or your neck or your arms or what have you, then you can just cross your elbows and see if you can hook your thumbs. Either way. So arms are straight or crossed and hooked. Any variation on a theme is good too. You can hold your shirt, you can imagine, do what's comfortable. Okay? So let's lift the elbows up. And as you lift your elbows up, see if you can do this. Can you press your shoulder blades down? So the elbows are lifting towards the sky, and the shoulder blades are moving towards the floor or the earth. Just a little. Okay, so let's lower the arms a little bit and take them to the right. Turn your head in the opposite direction. So the elbows are going to the right and the head is turning to the left. Now notice the breath here. And then let's move left with the arms and right with the head. Where do you find your breath now? And then let's come back to the middle and unwind the arms and see what that feels like. Something's happening. So you take a moment to pause, feel the resonance. And here's the hard part. You're going to switch arms to remember which one you had on top. I still have trouble with that. So cross the other way. Do the variation that you can. Because really what's important here is the moving of two directions. So we're going to lift the arms up, and we're going to press the shoulders down. So it's a little coordination. And sometimes coordination's a little rusty in the beginning, don't worry. Do your best. Shoulder blades down the back like waterfalls, elbows lifting towards the sky. Good, and then let's lower the arms a little, take them to the right, and then turn the head to the left. Drop the left shoulder. Good. Lift the left ear. Nice. And then let's take the arms to the left and turn our head to the right. Lift the right ear. That evens out your neck, in case you're wondering why that's such a weird direction. And drop the right shoulder. Or press it down a little. Yeah, good. This gives you a little bit more of a stretch. And then back to the middle and unwind. You feel something going on. So just take a moment. Great. Let's see if this has any bearing on our meditation practice. So please take the seat that's comfortable for you. Allow your eyes to fully close or cast your gaze softly 4 or 5 feet in front of you. Either way, relax your eyes. Allow the eyes to sink very deeply into their sockets, as if they were falling into some luscious quilts. Our gaze is soft and somewhere inside. Could be the back of the neck, it could be the heart, or it could be a place of your choosing that just feels organic and natural. And then draw your attention to whatever the bones are that are closest to the earth. So if we're seated on a cushion, it could be our sitting bones and the outsides of the legs and the feet. If we're sitting on a chair, it could be our feet. Allow the bones that are closest to or touching the earth to really have their own weight, as if they were connecting a little bit more deeply to the ground. And then allow all your bones to have their own weight. And notice how they're stacked in a way that is holding you perfectly fine. So with the responsibility given to the bones to hold us upright, we can soften all of our tissue surrounding the bones. So the soft tissue becomes just that, soft. And as you scan your body, if you notice any area of your body holding on, contracting, resisting, maybe send a little tender breath there. It coaxes it to relax and let go. And then soften all inside, the belly, the lungs, the inside of the throat, even your brain. Just let everything melt and hang, so that every little breath that you take palpates something inside. Massages, palpates, rocks, soothes. Allow the tongue in your mouth to soften. Allow the tongue, as it falls down your throat, to soften. Shoulders falling down the back like waterfalls. Notice the connection of your hand to your leg, or your hands to each other. Whatever that feels like. So we scan the body, coax it where we can to relax and soften and let go, and just be. And then we can notice the culmination of sensations called breath happening somewhere in our bodies now. Maybe we notice that just at the entrance of the nostrils. A little tiny breeze that blows in and out, carrying warmth and coolness. Or maybe we notice a very soft gentle rising and falling of our chest somewhere. Or maybe we notice the navel moving and the belly rising and falling. Or maybe the breath is happening someplace else. A tiny little pocket somewhere. A little nook or cranny somewhere. And that's perfectly fine. But what does that breath feel like? What do we think it feels like, but what does it actually feel like? If you were to imagine walking into a field or a meadow and sitting down, and the breath was a breeze on your skin, what would it feel like? What does it feel like to place your awareness right in the center of wherever your breath is felt the most, and to notice it like a wind or a breeze? Does it move your hair? Does it move your clothing? Does it move your mind? As you're noticing the inhale and the exhale, the two most common aspects of breath to pay attention to. You may also become keen on awareness of the pauses, the little gaps, the little space between an inhale and an exhale. The exhale and the inhale. There's a little bit of an empty pause after an exhale. There's a very slight empty pause or full pause after the inhale. Very small but noticeable. Let's see what we can actually feel in the breath for the next minutes of our sit. And let's see if we can keep the mind connected to the body so that at least it notices when it's drifted off to somewhere else. And invite it back very kindly, lovingly, to the next breath that you can feel, or the next sensation, whichever is more welcoming to you. Taking our seat, both literally and metaphorically in the body. In these next few minutes that we have of our practice, if you'd like to, open your awareness to include the sensations that aren't just associated with breath. Feel what's happening anywhere in the landscape of your body. Could be a tingle in the scalp, could be a tickle in the belly, pressure, heat or coolness somewhere. Allow the mind to be called and drawn towards any sensation that it feels within the realm of the body. That can include the sensations of breath, but not only the sensations of breath. Break.
Yeah, we can make just a couple quick announcements.
Please.
Okay. So first, we've been promoting our community table in the back, and on there there's a...
Hopefully you found it a little interesting to do those first couple of mindful body exercises, I guess, for lack of a better word. Movement, not a lot of movement, but it's a little bit of movement. I think when I first started practicing movement more mindfully, I was sort of shocked at how long I had moved not mindfully, kind of silently embarrassed, because I'd been practicing yoga for at least 15 years before I started practicing meditation. I mean, I can't say I was not mindful at all, but it was a stark contrast when I really turned my mind to my body differently. A stark contrast to what I had been forgetting to do, really, or just not even really knowing how to do previously. We don't notice our body usually that much until it hurts or until it gets sick. And inevitably that'll happen, and already probably has. I mean, we've all gotten sick at least a couple times in our lifetime already. And yet this body, it's quite resilient, gets us around, does everything we ask it to do to the best of its ability, Usually doesn't complain, but will if we don't listen to it at all. It gets kind of loud. Hello. But it's also a very interesting vehicle for the mind, or of the mind. So you could say both for the mind and of the mind, because our awareness comes in through the body, right? Sight, sound, touch, sensations, smell, and taste. So the five sense doors are what feeds consciousness, what defines consciousness, really, in many ways. And yet we get around, it's kind of like the head's on the body, but sometimes, like what we might have noticed in the twist, the head's not really on the body. It's in front of the body, or it's somewhere behind the body, or maybe off hovering in some land off to the side, But it's not so often that we're really connected, that the mind is really sitting on the body and in the body, is occupying or embodied in the body. And I find that really funny. We have this unit here, and yet it seems to disperse itself quite easily without our knowledge. So what does it mean, or what does it take to be mindful of the body? What are the benefits of being mindful of the body? Well, they're unending, really. And so when I was thinking about coming here to see you and talk with you tonight and bring in this subject that I've culled many, many times, I was thinking, okay, well, what is my newest understanding for today, anyway? How do I see things interesting? Or what is of interest to me in the mind-body connection, and the Dharma and the body, and the Dharma and the mind, So I was fooling around and reading some of my teacher. I am very fortunate. I've had a teacher for a really long time, and very close to him. His name is Ajahn Amaro. Maybe some of you know of him. And he's a Theravadan monk. He used to be up in Mendocino at Abhayagiri Monastery, and he was tapped to run a very large monastery. Took over for Ajahn Sumedho. Some of you may know of him. Outside of London, called Amravati. He's inspired me for 28 or so years. So I was reading some things that he wrote about the body, and I want to read something to you that I find interesting. He says, the deep interrelated and interpenetrating relationship between the physical and mental aspects of our being was seen as so significant to the Buddha that he repeatedly underscored it and developed meditation practices around it to assist his students in fully realizing their spiritual potential. This emphasis was most regularly phrased in terms of mindfulness of the body. A couple of quotations from the Pali scriptures illustrate this clearly. And one is from the Majjhimaka Nikaya. Anyone who has developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body has included within themselves whatever wholesome states there are that play a part in true knowledge. Just as anyone who has extended their mind over the great ocean has included within that whatever streams there are that flow into the ocean. That's really interesting to me. So the Buddha did talk about mindfulness of the body. You know, it was the first foundation of mindfulness. And then he regularly talked about samampati. I'm a little dyslexic, so I tend to screw these words up, so feel free to smile. Now I'm going to look at it now that I said that. Samapajana. And that word is a Pali word that translates into full awareness. And when you combine that with sati, it means being fully aware or awake to the body and as it's being or as it's moving. And this can include these really little mundane movements that we make, like getting up, like looking around, like sitting down, like lying down, like standing. You know, ordinary, mundane things. If we're connected to whatever it is that the body is doing, we're in the present moment. And so it's this kind of pristine awareness, and what I like to think of as this pristine connection between the mind and the body. Opens us up to all these little tributaries or streams, so to speak, of not just feeling the body and sensations, but actually of what it means to connect the mind and body and how they reflect each other. So I thought I'd say a few things about that. And then I want to hear from you too. Because we all have, really interesting ways to perspective on our body and our mind and how they communicate or don't and how they live together. If we're really staying in the body or being embodied, it can create this continuity of practice that I think is quite interesting because, like we have a practice on a cushion or a chair. We have our meditation or our mindfulness practice. Okay, so when I sit, I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to meditate or meditate. Or maybe if you have a yoga practice, you can say, okay, I'm going to be really aware of my body when I'm on this mat. If we have walking meditation practice, we can intend to do the same thing. I'm going to be very mindful of my walking from here to here and back. Yeah. And we tend to separate then our practice into these little units. Okay, when I'm on this thing, I'm practicing this. When I'm on this flat thing, this plastic piece, I'm practicing that. when I'm walking from here to there, I'm practicing this, or what have you, or I'm doing some breathing practice now, or whatever it is. And we try to stay pretty concentrated and awake and aware of what we're doing during that time period, or on these little props that we're on. And then we get up and we walk away. And what happens? Boing. Many things. And we're not really that connected so much anymore. I mean, yeah, there's some resonance from the practice that carries throughout our day. And the more we practice and the more deeply we practice, there's more of a resonance and more of a connection during the day. So it never totally disappears. But what if we look at practice as the mind being in the body, present in the body, mindful of the body, embodied with whatever little mundane movements, ordinary movements we're doing whenever we get up off the cushion or off a mat or whatever it is. And use that as practice. That can be really inspiring and very interesting. Because if we're really in the body, we're in the present moment. The body doesn't exist in the past or the future. Nor does anything else, but especially we can, really feel that in the body. And so if we are just even paying attention to sensations in our feet, no matter what we're doing, sitting at our desk, driving our car, walking to go get the tea or coffee or whatever it is, or we're aware of what our hands are doing, picking something up, getting washed underwater, feeling the water. Whatever it is that we choose to pay attention to, it can be really an awakening, because all of a sudden we're in the present moment and we're sensing what's going on. Whoa. I say that and I feel a little tingle in my arms, which is kind of fun. It's like, oh wow, I'm really alive. I'm feeling it. And so this felt sense of the body can be an amazing practice and quite an interesting exploration of the mind, because we start to see things like, wow, I can be washing my hands and thinking about Mars. Or I can be talking to you, my body is in close proximity to you, and I'm thinking about someone that you remind me of who's not even around anymore. And those kinds of stories or experiences are endless, aren't they? One that I find kind of scary, because, I was living in New York a long time, and I used to notice that I could walk for blocks sometime, and I didn't really notice any of the shops. There are a lot of shops, a lot of stores in New York. So I started to notice the same thing in driving. When I started to drive here more, I've driven since I was 16, so it wasn't new to drive, but, I didn't drive very much when I was living in New York City. And I'm sure you've had this experience where you've gotten from the store to your house and you don't remember getting there. It's like, we think there are driverless cars to come. Well, there are driverless cars already. Our body's in the car, but where was the mind? And somehow we managed to get from point A to point B. We want to watch that, though, I don't think that's a great habit. Or you're walking, let's say, or, not even walking, try this one. You're sitting here, your body is here, you're listening to me to some capacity, and yet you're already thinking about what you have to do tomorrow, right? So your mind's not really in the chair. And then there's the one of, being light years ahead somewhere, or light years back somewhere, recalling a conversation a million times, or planning the next one that hasn't happened yet. So when we really, let that rest in the mind, that, hey, is my mind in my body very much? No. Not really. Not really. And a lot of that's just habit, it's just habit. So that's why I find it interesting in that twist, and I point this out, and I've been pointing this out for 30 years, and I catch myself still doing this, so it's not like I'm, noticing this in everybody else, I've got this down. I don't. I'm constantly reminding myself. But when I suggested that we go into a twist, most of you were like this already, and it was the head that turned, and it's like, well, the body's going, hey, wait, what about me? But the mind's already done it, and then it's boring. Done. Body hasn't done it yet. Mind's done it. Boring. What's next? Well, I wonder what she's going to ask us to do next. I've already done the twist. But, the body hasn't moved at all. And we do that, and we do that in lots of different kinds of ways. And it's kind of like the breath, You can think about your breath, and it's really boring, right? How many times have we meditated and, this gosh darn breath. It's so freaking boring. What else can I meditate on? But if we really feel it, it's amazing. I mean, the reason I suggested that maybe you imagine, walking into a meadow or a field and feeling that breeze is because I've had that kind of experience myself, and I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. It was almost as if I was inside my body and I felt the breeze inside. It was wild. And then it was textural and contextual and rich and dimensional and powerful. Maybe those times are rare because we're just, so used to breathing that it's like normal. But in those few seconds sometimes that we drop in and we actually feel the breath, it's phenomenal. What an experience. And breath isn't just one sensation. It's lots of them. It's a culmination of sensations. And yet, and this goes with all sensations, like we'll say, oh, well, that's painful. Well, if you look at an area of pain, if you really dissect it, it's got pleasure in it, actually. There's tickling, there's tingling, there's softness, there's movement, there's collision, there's jaggedness. There's all sorts of different sensations in just one little area of pain or one big area of pain. And I know a lot about this because I lived in chronic pain for 30 years, so I did dissect it quite a bit. But the same is with breath, or the same goes with breath. One little breath in and out, it can blow your mind if you really pay attention to it. Because you can feel it on the inside, you can feel it on the outside. There's lots of ways to feel breath. And it moves around. It's not always in the same place. So if we can embody this body and really sink into the felt sense of it, it's almost like, and if we had time, I would do this with you because it's kind of fun. It's almost like taking some steps with your eyes closed. You're feeling your way through. And so when you're really dropping into the body, that's what, in essence, that's what we're trying to do. It's kind of like sense it, feel it. Feel it in the dark. Because it's dark in there usually. What's this like? What's this like? Kind of feel it. Feel it through with curiosity. Feel around with curiosity. And just that act of feeling around keeps us in the present moment. And hopefully is somewhat intriguing. And so we become more and more sensitive to the body and more in communication. So the mind communicates with the body through its body language of sensations, communicates with the mind. And that does some interesting things too. Like the more sensitive we are to the body, the more we can hear what it's saying and not make it scream at us to hear what it's trying to say. But we can hear little signals like, you know what, you're a little dry. You need to drink more water. Or your blood sugar is starting to rise. I'm going to send you a little signal. Can you hear me? And usually we might not. And then it might send a little louder signal and a little louder signal. And all of a sudden we're shaky and can't breathe. If anybody has low blood sugar, you know what I mean. Can't wait to eat. Or you're tired. It's time to get a little bit more rest. And you ignore that and you ignore that because the show is really interesting or the work is, making you stay a little longer or whatever it is. And all of a sudden you're nodding out in the car or you're nodding out when someone's talking to you or you're putting your head down on your desk. Not enough sleep. Or, gosh, come to meditation, close your eyes, boom. A lot of people relate to that. So there are these little signals that the body's always sending out, and we don't usually listen because we're just not attuned yet, that's all. It's not because we don't want to, it's just we're not used to it. Or maybe we haven't even known that we could get used to it, wasn't in our awareness yet. If you've ever been ill or you've had an accident, injured yourself, then you listen a little bit more. But then once you get well again, and you heal, off and running a lot of times. But an illness or an injury can be a wake-up call, like to pay a little bit more attention. Let's not wait. For those of you who haven't had an illness or an injury, don't wait. But the body is also really interesting, almost seismatically. Seismatically, is that a word? I might be making that up. Because, for instance, our bodies will feel and do something, respond to a thought or an emotion before it's actually cognized. So your body is sending you a signal right before you get really angry, or right before you cry, or right before you laugh. And we're not normally aware of that. Why might we want to be aware of that? Well, let's say you're having a conversation with someone and you need to be very mindful of your speech. And the conversation's getting heated. And you're really trying to be mindful of your speech. Right speech, wise speech, right speech, wise speech. And you're not noticing that your stomach is turning into a knot. And as it's turning into a knot, the words are getting a little bit more far-flung. They haven't come out of the mouth yet, but you want to say something. You're like wise speech, mindful speech. But the stomach keeps getting knotted and knotted and knotted, and all of a sudden you blurt it out. Rah, 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 rah. Do you remember something like that? I know I'm not the only one that's had that happen. And then you're like, oh, shoot. Well, if you were a little bit more embodied, or you were able to pay attention to the signal as it was coming up, and you felt that stomach get into a little knot, and you're having the conversation, but you're still feeling your stomach, like you were looking towards me and noticing your breath. You were looking towards me and noticing your feet. You're looking towards someone else and you're having a conversation, and you can do this. You can cultivate this skill. You're looking at someone, you're having a conversation, and you're noticing the knot grow in your stomach. You can do this all at once. This is called introspection, or inner awareness in contemplative circles. And the knot's getting bigger, and you start, oh, I'm having a knot in my stomach. I'm about to lose it. I'm about to say something that I'm not going to like. I'm about to say something this is going to make me lose my job. Okay, I better relax my belly. And you try to soften. And you breathe down there. And maybe it lets go a little bit, but just enough so that you can be a little bit more mindful and wise with your speech, so that you don't lose your cool. We can do this. So that is a good reason why you might want to listen to some of the signals. Because your body's always our body's always telling us, each of us, in its own way, its own language, this is about to happen. But it's like the head in the twist. What? I don't hear you. Oh, this is boring. I think I know everything. That's what the head's saying. And the body's going, no, you really don't. I'm knowing everything before you're actually knowing it. So we bring the two together, these two facets of ourselves, these two components, this mind and body, and we start to bring it more in sync. And not only can we take a little bit better care of ourselves, because we're listening to the signals, we can regulate our system. So it's a constant caring in a sense, like, oh, well, I feel a little anxiety coming on, or a little depression, or whatever it is. And we can start to attend to it, not by getting into the story. This is another benefit of just being in the body. Not by getting hooked or spun around with the story of it and identifying with it because of this, and she said that, and he said, and I think, and they did. Not that kind of stuff, but just, oh, these sensations. We attend to the sensations, and usually what most sensations want is a good ear and some softness. Most of the time. Can you relax, please? Can you let go? Can I have a little space here? That's basically what the body wants most of the time. And if we can do that, we're not just attending to the body and the physical sensations. It's much bigger than that. And this is what's fascinating to me for 35 years. We're attending to the thought and the emotion, but indirectly. And in a way, sometimes more sanely. Because we're not hooked and not caught in the story, me, mine, I, you said, we did, and I think, and this has to change, and whatever it is that's going on in here. We're only attending to the sensations in the body which are not personal, easily identified, and usually fairly easily tended to. So by tending to the sensations that are associated or brought on or precursing a thought or an emotion, by attending to those sensations when they're happening, as they're arising, we're attending to the mind and the heart. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because sometimes I've notice that some people think, oh, it's just the mind, it's just the mind. It's just got to talk about it, got to figure it out, got to analyze it, got to process it. And yes, we do. I'm not saying we don't. But we need to work with the depository here, with the home base, with the living, breathing material of the mind, the matter of the mind. That matters. The matter of the mind, not just in here, but in here, needs attending to just as much as up here. And little by little, we're starting to pay attention to this a little bit more. In working with trauma, in working with strong memories, in working with anything that has to do with self-compassion and care. We have to include the body. Can't separate it. Because if we separate the mind from the body for too long, it's just going to show up in a way that's not pleasant. It won't be fun. And then it's a rude awakening. I mean, it can be a heavenly messenger, yes. But sometimes we don't need to wait that long. So the body is a mirror to the mind. It's reflecting every thought and every feeling, every emotion that we have all the time. All the time. And one way, so we feel that through sensations, we can also register that through breath. Because the breath and the mind are inextricably linked. And this is why a lot of yogic practices work with the breath. In fact, a lot of Buddhist practices work with breath. There are different Tibetan breathing practices. There are ways to visualize breath in Theravadan practices. Zen practice uses breath in a particular way, in particular ways. There's many ways in Zen. And the thinking behind that is that the breath and the mind are inextricably linked. So if we can control the breath, we control the mind. The breath and the mind are part of the nervous system. And by controlling the breath, we can regulate the nervous system. If we regulate the nervous system, we're regulating the mind. So everything kind of goes together, you know. I mean, it's completely interdependent. We have facets that I think we can separate out. You know, I'm going to look at my heart, I'm going to look at my mind, I'm going to look at my body. Yeah, and get to know each of our components or our facets because they're unique, you know. And then we can also get to look at the whole. You know, how things correlate, interrelate, snub each other out, ignore, relate, etc. So there's a lot to be learned in just noticing the body, and a lot to be gained in just noticing the body. Not just to be in the present moment, although that's a very, I think, potent reason to be in your body, is it keeps us in the present moment. But also, it's a beautiful vehicle to the very profound depths of our mind and our heart. So, of course, I didn't look at any of these wonderful quotes that I have, but I do want to end with, I'll just pick this, with David White has a really wonderful poem on what he calls ground that I think is very apropos of what I was talking about tonight. He says, ground is what lies beneath our feet. It is the place where we already stand, a state of recognition, the place or the circumstances to which we will belong, whether we wish to or not. It is what holds and supports us, but also what we do not want to be true. It is what challenges us physically or psychologically, irrespective of our hoped-for needs. It is the living, underlying foundation that tells us what we are, where we are, what season we are in, and what, no matter what we wish in the abstract, is about to happen in our body, in the world, or in the conversation between the two. To come to ground is to find home in circumstances and in the very physical body we inhabit, in the midst of those circumstances, and above all, to face the truth. No matter how difficult that truth may be, to come to ground is to begin the courageous conversation, to step into difficulty, and by taking that first step, begin the movement through all difficulties, to find the support and the foundation that has been beneath our feet all along. A place to step onto, a place onto which to stand, and a place from which to step. So may some of this be of service to you in some way in your practice or your life practice or practice life or however you want to look at it. What didn't resonate or make any sense, you know, just leave it magistically right on the floor. But I wish you a lot of connection and conversation between your body and mind. And between each other, you know, because it's in our Sangha that our richness can get tended to even more, you know, because we're all coming from a similar garden bed here. And each of our blossoms and blooms are unique to us, but from the same soil. And so the conversations that we have around different topics or subjects and that have relationship, well, everything has a relationship to Dharma, but as we tie it into Dharma and our practice is really beautiful. So may this spur some conversation between your own mind and body and between each of your mind and bodies as a group, collectively. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Just one note, Jill does have a day long coming up on April